It was a shocking death. A photographer
killed after a section of a tree somehow fell on top of her.
While investigators are searching for answers as to what exactly happened to her.
May not have been an accident.
We came back because some guy told us that some woman got smashed.
Were you a part of it, Jordan?
I didn't push it off, but I moved the log with him. I pulled it out. I didn't know he was going to kick it off though.
A woman lost her life and you knew it.
The morning light slipped gently through the trees of Hocking Hills State Park, painting soft gold over the moss-covered stones and winding trails. It was a picture-perfect September day in 2019, calm, quiet, almost sacred. Victoria Schaefer, a beloved local photographer, had set out to capture moments that would last a lifetime. With her camera in hand, she guided high school seniors into frame, adjusting lenses, chasing light, doing what she loved. But in a single, shattering moment, everything changed. A massive log, 6 feet long and 75 pounds of dead weight, came crashing down from the cliffs above. It struck Victoria in the head. She died instantly. Laughter turned to silence. Joy dissolved into screams. What was supposed to be a day of memories became a nightmare no one could have predicted, or forgotten. The chaos that followed was unreal. Students froze, their smiles gone, replaced with stunned disbelief. Parents' phones rang in the distance as word spread with unnatural speed, something terrible had happened. The woods, once alive with the buzz of footsteps and soft shutter clicks, fell into a terrifying quiet. One student sobbed uncontrollably, another whispered, "She's not moving." Time seemed to slow. Every second dragged under the weight of confusion and horror. This wasn't just an accident. It was the sudden extinguishing of life in the middle of a beautiful day. The serenity of nature had turned on itself, and no one could understand why. The 911 call crackled with confusion and fear. "We're at Old Man's Cave, a tree branch fell on her. Please hurry." The operator tried to make sense of the panic, but the dispatcher wasn't the only one left puzzled. First responders arrived swiftly and surveyed the scene.
Where are we? 911, where's your emergency? Okay, we're at Hocking Hills.
At first glance, it looked like a tragic accident, the kind you see in disclaimers about hiking safety. But as investigators looked closer, doubt began to creep in. The log's ends were clean-cut. Other logs nearby appeared to have been moved. Even more concerning were the fresh footprints leading to the overlook above. Nature hadn't taken Victoria's life. Something, or someone, had. Emergency crews secured the area, but even their movements felt surreal. The weight of what had just occurred hung in the air like mist, thick and impossible to ignore. Paramedics exchanged glances, one whispering, "This doesn't feel right." Bystanders stood frozen, some recording, others holding each other. A park ranger looked up at the cliff and shook his head slowly. That's not where logs just fall from. An eerie realization settled over everyone. They were standing not at the site of an accident, but a potential crime scene. The woods, once a sanctuary, now felt haunted. Something was deeply, unmistakably wrong, and they were only beginning to understand just how wrong it was. Days passed, and grief turned to unease in the small town of Logan, Ohio. Then, out of nowhere, a tip shattered the silence. A mother told police her daughter had received a disturbing text from a friend. It read, "I did something serious at the park today with someone else."
were made after authorities say they got a tip that one of the suspects had texted another student that he'd done something serious at the park.
That cryptic message pointed detectives toward two local boys, 16-year-olds Jordan Buckley and Jaden Church. Not strangers. Not lurking criminals. Just teenagers. The kind you pass in the hallway. The kind who might have made a terrible, irreversible mistake. The question wasn't just what they did, it was whether they understood what they had done. It was the kind of revelation that shifted everything. Small towns run on whispers, and soon those whispers turned into gasps. Names were spoken in coffee shops, on school steps, in living rooms filled with tension. People who knew the boys found themselves stuck between disbelief and dread. Jordan? Jaden? No way, some muttered. Others weren't so surprised. They'd seen the wild streak, the careless dares, the edge of impulse. What made the story more haunting was its ordinariness. 2 bored teens, a park visit, and 1 text message. But behind those few words lay a secret that would unravel a community and a family, and alter lives forever. When detectives brought Jordan in, they expected resistance. What they got instead was something much more haunting. At first, he claimed innocence, just a walk, just hanging out, nothing more. But his eyes betrayed him. Nervous energy pulsed through his movements, and his words cracked under pressure. Slowly, his story began to shift. He admitted to being at the overlook. Then to seeing the log. Then to helping move it. Finally, he said it, Jaden had kicked it.
But I skipped a part of what we did. We walked all the way down to the end of this, and Jaden kicked off a branch. Not a branch, it was a log. It was a big log, like probably this wide, this long, and he kicked it, and it rolled off the cliff, and it made a loud bang, so we ran. And we ran into Miranda and AJ. They had no idea. We didn't tell them what was happening.
That log?
Yeah, it's that log.
That log.
He just kicked it.
I didn't know he was going to do that, Jordan murmured, almost whispering to himself. We were just messing around. But someone was dead. A mother. A wife. A woman simply doing her job. And suddenly, messing around wasn't innocent. It was fatal. As the room grew heavier, Jordan's voice shrank. The detective remained calm but persistent, peeling back the layers of a fragile teenage mind unraveling under guilt. Jordan fidgeted, eyes darting around like he was looking for a way out. He wasn't just confessing, he was reliving the moment second by second. It made a loud bang, we just ran. He couldn't look up. Not once. The weight of reality was finally pressing down. The kind of pressure that doesn't just change your future, it cracks something inside you. And yet, it had to be spoken. For justice. For Victoria. For truth. Investigators gathered more than just words. Physical evidence began to align with the unfolding story. Footprints found near the overlook matched the boys' shoes. Multiple witnesses placed them at the scene. Phone records confirmed their location. And the text message, the haunting confession sent in a moment of panic, became the final thread that unraveled the truth. Jordan, clearly shaken, grew more detailed. He sketched maps, described the incline of the hill, and even pointed out where the log bounced on the rocks before hitting Victoria. It was this long, he said, holding his hands apart. I didn't think it would do anything. But it did. It ended a life. What emerged wasn't a tale of evil, but of unimaginable carelessness. Bored teenagers, playing with danger as if it were a toy, with no thought to who might be below. The image of that log, resting motionless where Victoria had fallen, became a symbol. Not just of tragedy, but of the razor-thin line between harmless fun and irreversible damage. And Jaden, the one who reportedly kicked it.
Were you a part of it, Jordan?
I didn't push it off, but I moved the log with him. I pulled it out. I didn't know he was going to kick it off though.
A woman lost her life and you knew it.
Remained silent through it all. Emotionless. Distant. The bond between him and Jordan, once built on friendship, now teetered under the weight of truth. Justice was closing in, not with vengeance, but with clarity, and the boys were running out of places to hide. The courtroom was quiet. Not with peace, but with pressure, the kind that fills the air when tragedy demands justice. The community of Logan, Ohio, filled the gallery seats with hearts caught between anger and heartbreak. Victoria's family sat silently, gripping tissues, eyes wide with restrained sorrow as the facts were laid bare. The boys, Jordan Buckley and Jaden Church, faced charges of reckless homicide, a second-degree felony. Not premeditated murder, but something still heavy with consequence. The prosecution wasn't there to paint them as monsters. Instead, they framed it clearly: this wasn't evil, this was irresponsibility that killed. Testimony after testimony piled up. Diagrams, maps, witness accounts, all leading back to that single, senseless moment. The defense leaned on their youth, their immaturity, their inexperience with consequence. But the prosecution cut through the fog with a single line that rang through the courtroom like a bell. This isn't about bad kids. It's about a bad decision. Then came Victoria's husband. His voice trembled as he addressed the court. Victoria was light, he said. And that light was stolen, not by hate.
She told me something she never told me before. She said the happiest part of her day was at the end of the night when she was in my arms. She told me she loved me and couldn't wait to spend the rest of her life with me. I loved her more at that moment than ever before. And the next night she was gone.
But by a silence that followed a fatal mistake. The room fell into stillness. The weight of law settled on everyone's shoulders, even those of the boys who sat just feet away, now facing the darkest truth of their lives. Jordan and Jaden eventually pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter. Each was sentenced to 3 years in juvenile detention, with the possibility of early release before age 21. For some, this felt like a measured act of justice, a chance for rehabilitation, not retribution. But for others, especially those closest to Victoria, it felt like the scales were never fully balanced. 3 years, some murmured in disbelief. For a life? The town of Logan was divided. Online forums flared with fury, sorrow, and questions about the value of a life weighed against the age of its takers. In court, the judge addressed them both with the gravity of a man handing down far more than time. This is not a celebration of punishment, he said. This is a lesson in consequence. Jordan appeared to understand. He kept his head low, hands trembling. Jaden remained more distant, his face unreadable. They no longer sat side by side. The secret that once united them had become a wall between them. Victoria's family didn't rise to cheer, nor did they cry out in anger. They simply sat, broken, dignified, and forever changed. The court was adjourned. The sentence was set. But for everyone involved, the story was far from over. Months passed, but the echoes of that day in Hocking Hills refused to fade. Though the courtroom had emptied and headlines began to quiet, the weight of loss remained. Victoria's children visited the forest where she once found joy, leaving behind flowers and small notes taped to tree trunks. Her husband, in interviews, spoke of grief not as something that fades, but as something that reshapes every breath. Some days I can smile, he said, but even then, I feel her absence like a shadow on my chest. Her presence had been the heartbeat of their home, and now, that rhythm was gone. Jordan, confined within a juvenile detention facility, began writing letters. One to Victoria's family. One to his own mother. One to the judge. In each, he tried to make sense of what he'd done. I didn't know what we did would do this, he wrote. But I know now. And I carry it every day. Counselors reported progress. He engaged in therapy. He seemed to grasp, little by little, the depth of his actions. Jaden remained quiet, detached, some said. Perhaps it was shame. Perhaps denial. The system focused on rehabilitation. But for a crime like this, redemption was never guaranteed. The question lingered like fog in the trees: could remorse ever match the weight of a life lost? Victoria Schaefer's death wasn't caused by rage, vengeance, or premeditation. It was the result of a moment, a fleeting, careless moment. And yet, it ended a life, shattered a family, and left a community grappling with heartbreak. She had gone to Hocking Hills that day to create memories for others. Instead, she became one. But even in death, Victoria's presence endured. Her photography studio eventually closed, but her images, radiant with laughter, love, and life, lived on in school hallways, family albums, and public exhibits. Her work became more than art. It became a legacy, and a lesson. Across Logan, changes began to take root. Schools introduced new programs on decision-making, empathy, and accountability. Park signs were updated with warnings and educational messages urging visitors to respect nature and one another. Each September, like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.